Morning. Just had a few school groups through, so I found myself with a few spare minutes, and that gives me a chance to talk about something that's been getting right up my nose for days. Not just my nose, up the nose of every decent falconer in the country. When a left-wing newspaper last week reported a study done by an animal rights activist group that suggested that falconers like me and places like this rely on starvation to train their birds, and I thought I ought to deal with that head on. At first, it's just so ridiculous it made me laugh until I realised that actually people who don't know might believe this twaddle. And so I thought I ought to put it to bed. Starvation is a very real issue for wild birds of prey. I mean, it's a serious issue. It's what kills most of them. 75%, that is 3/4. That is 2 out of 3 young birds of prey won't even survive to see their first birthday. And do you know what the big killer is? Starvation in the winter. Their dinner doesn't want to be their dinner. So it's never easy to catch. And all it takes is a little bit of bad luck. Bad luck when hunting, snapping a feather or two, feeling a little unwell, and suddenly you're not strong enough, you're not powerful enough to catch your prey which might weigh 2 or 3 times what you do, and you starve to death. And so starvation is like the sword of Damocles that hangs over the heads of wild birds of prey all the time, from the moment they hatch to the moment they die. And it's very likely what's going to kill them in the end. Birds of prey in captivity, different thing altogether. These birds will never have to face starvation, never. They arrive here when they're very young. If they're to be imprinted, and most of the birds I have here are, then we get them about 10 days old. Every time we feed them from that age, from when they're a tiny little chick, we make a food whistle, the noise that we're going to use to call them to us in future. They get used to hearing that noise and knowing that food's about to arrive, and once they can stand up and walk around, we get them to actually come to us, take a few steps towards us for that food, and then we ask them to come a little bit further and then hop to us. And once they can fly, they are already trained. And then we condition them. And when I was a young man, conditioning took a bit of understanding. Those dusty old books from the library on falconry that I used to get, I never understood the chapter on conditioning, but now I'm an older man, I do understand it. And really, it's about creating habits. It's about getting a bird so used to coming when it whistles, when you whistle, that they'll eventually hear the whistle and they'll come, and it becomes less about food. And in the end, when these behaviours are repeated week after week, month after month, year after year, these birds will respond to the whistle in incredibly high condition. And that's handy in the summer because they're going to be changing their feathers over. We can't have them go hungry in the summer at all, not ever, because the evidence is left behind on the bird's body. Birds that go any distance of time without food in the summertime get stress marks on their feathers, lines of weakness. And those feathers will snap along those lines of weakness, and the bird becomes very tatty and flying becomes very difficult. So the evidence is there. If you make a bird go too long, and you find those stress marks on wild birds all the time when they get brought in, injured ones, or dead ones that you find, often they've got stress marks on the feathers. So our birds don't go hungry, and even when they're not to be hand reared, even when they've been bred in captivity and reared by their own parents, and bear in mind all birds of prey that we use for falconry or for bird shows have to be bred in captivity. When they arrive here and they're older birds, they're pretty scared of humans at first, and so we man them. That means we attach them to our hand and we teach them that humans are not going to hurt them. And we feed them, we put food on the hand, sometimes for hours and occasionally for days, until the bird will take its first food. And then, just like with that tiny chick, we ask the bird to step to our hand for its daily food, and then hop to our hand, and then fly to our hand, and at first on a training line, and eventually flying free. And we condition those birds. We get them so used to doing that behaviour that in the end they respond in really high condition. Starving doesn't come into it. We are managing appetite. That is a different thing altogether. I mean, you manage appetite with your dog. You don't go home and open 18 tins of dog food for your dog, do you? That would be ridiculous. Your dog would be obese and unwell. It is the same with birds of prey. We overfeed them, they get fat. They can become unwell, and they will sit in a tree for a week. and that is a pain, and we do not want that. So yeah, we're managing appetite. Starvation is something very different altogether, and there's a huge difference between those two things, and well, I hope that's gone some way into clearing it up. Anyway, it's a cracking day. My Chilean blue is there, enjoying that sunshine. I'm going to go and sit down and work on my tan. If you're working in the display arena today, I hope your birds fly well. Catch up soon, guys. Cheers.